Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me, and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings, and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm, and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. I am really happy to bring in a wonderful guest. Her name is Dr. Gilly Khan, and she is a clinical psychologist. She's based in Atlanta and specializes in neurodiversity, emotional regulation, and she's just written a brand new book called Allow Me to Interrupt: A Psychologist Reveals the Emotional Truth Behind Women's ADHD. She is a mum as well and understands ADHD from a lived experience. So I'm really excited to welcome Gilly to the podcast and break down lots of topics that I have in my notes. And I think the first one that I wanted to kind of go straight into was about female friendship, ADHD and female friendship. And so many of us experience the difficulties, the nuances that sometimes we just can't put our finger on. And it leads into so many of the topics that you've written in your brand new book, which has just come out, which is pretty much based on RSD and emotional regulation. First of all, welcome. Second of all, why do you think these impact our friendships so much when we understand ADHD a little bit more?
I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because when I started doing research in graduate school and even before graduate school and college, my research focused on friendship and more so in children and adolescents. But now that I'm an adult and I work with a lot more adults, I have a better understanding of how friendship kind of surfaces and what are kind of the intricacies of interpersonal relationships in friendship in adults too. And it's very clear that many aspects of ADHD can also influence our
Mm.
relationships, not just friendships. But in my book, I talk about how the female brain is a social brain. And I reference the book, The Female Brain, a lot by Luann Brizendine. And I know from my study of friendship previously that what's important or the types of relationships that we gravitate to differ between the sexes. So when you look at male friendships, just the way that boys or men hang out with each other and how often they stay in touch with each other, that's very different from females, even in adulthood. For women, relationships tend to be more dyadic. Girls also spend time in groups, but their friendships also focus on forming those one-on-one bonds. So it's very normal to see two women getting coffee and catching up on life. And when men, like my husband, for example, and I'm sorry to stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason because this is what the research shows. But when men hang out, they will go watch a football game together, and it might be like more than one, like a few friends hanging out. And so boys, in terms of like the friendship in children, you see that boys tend to hang out in groups and their relationships tend to be more shallow. That doesn't mean that they're low quality. It just means that they're spending time with each other and there's less talking and learning about each other. There's less depth, but it's still highly supportive. And boys and men tend to be content with that. Whereas with women, relationships are a lot more difficult and nuanced. And you even see that in the way that it shows up in conflict. Like, how do boys and men argue with each other directly? Girls and women tend to disagree in indirect ways, like they'll use passive aggression or um, gossip about each other, which might ruin the other person's reputation. And so language plays a huge role for females versus for males. Now, how does this tie into ADHD or neurodiversity in general? We know that emotional dysregulation plays a role for people with ADHD. And if you're emotionally dysregulated, you might be a little bit more unhinged
Mm,
in what you say. And so both, in the case of males and females, that would cause a problem because men maybe would be more likely to become angry and directly say something angry as
mm,
someone that they're mad at versus, with females, maybe a secret slips or they gossip or they get so angry that maybe it does come out too. And then that's considered unacceptable in terms of like gender norms because girls are expected to be polite and not to be so direct.
yeah, thank you for explaining all of that. And as you were talking, I was literally thinking about so many different scenarios because, yeah, even though they are sort of gender stereotypes, they do fall into probably what a lot of us can recognize and see. And again, this isn't sort of like vast research, but a lot of the women I've spoken to who find out that they are neurodivergent later on in life have similar stories of difficulty in friendships, not quite understanding why we didn't fit in, like we felt like an outsider. There was a need to mask and people please. And they often hung out with boys, growing up because boys were just a little bit less complex and more direct. And they were just kind of like able just to be who they were without judgment and maybe not quite understanding the social dynamics, the female social dynamics, the hierarchy which does play out from a very, very young age. I saw it with one of my daughters who really suffered with RSD. And she, at the age of sort of like 2 or 3 at nursery, would come home and say, so and so's left me out. Why would she not let me play? I don't understand. It kind of like beds into us, doesn't it, from a very early age? And I think this is my, hypothesis that we as women, neurodivergent women, we do prefer direct, honest conversations. I don't love small talk. I prefer to go straight in and have like a deep conversation within minutes. It's painful for me to have a coffee with someone and all we do is skirt around holidays, kids' homework, schools, that type of thing. I would much prefer someone says to me, I'm really struggling and this is what's going on and I really need help and I do the same. But that's often isn't the dynamic of a female friendship. And then we can feel like we're the outsider because we can be too much or we don't give in a way that is socially accepted and all these different things. And I do think it is important to break it all down because then we can understand and we can validate ourselves and most importantly, find our tribe because I've seen it before when ADHD women are together. It's chaos, it's fun, there's humor, there's laughter, there's tears, there's noise, and people are talking over each other, interrupting. But at least we feel that there's a connection, an authentic connection. I'm just wondering what you think about that, I guess, maybe from your insights, more from the clinical side as well.
Yes, 100%. I can relate to all of that personally. So we understand each other. The first step would be to find each other, right? Like, and to put a bunch of ADHD women together. But I think, since people who are neurodivergent are in the minority, it's hard to find your people. And so a lot of us, especially when we're late diagnosed, end up feeling like there's something wrong, but we can't exactly pinpoint what it is. But I was thinking also in terms of like the sensory component, piece of it is like you hear so many different conversations going on. And there's really so much social nuance that goes into, especially when you're trying to fit in with a group of girls that already know each other. It's like, when do you jump in? And you can really get lost in your head and self critical. So I think there's this big like sensory overload component. And then even sometimes when I go out with people I am comfortable with, but it's a lot of people, I tend to be very quiet,
Yeah.
not necessarily because I'm anxious, but because my head is like listening to this conversation and then this conversation, and this one is boring. This one's a bit more interesting,
Yeah.
but you get so caught up in your thoughts that you don't even chime in at the right time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I get that. And it is interesting, isn't it? Because I think maybe we have felt this social discomfort. Like you say, we overanalyze. There's so much going on inside our heads saying, have I talked too much? Have I talked too little? Do I need to be more outgoing? Do I need to listen more? All of this. And there's so much mental chatter that we actually can't enjoy being in that company if we are actually with the right people. But also with women and girls, we have sort of been socially conditioned to, you need to be part of a big group, and you need to have lots of girlfriends, and you've got to be there for everybody, and you've got to support people. And sometimes the way we are sociable is much better one on one. And being in a big group, we could, like exactly what you said then, we find that quite overwhelming, from a sensory perspective, but also being able to contribute or to talk. And I just wish that we could be more open as women, even from a very young age, and say to our daughters and say, it's okay, like there's nothing wrong with you if you don't want to hang out in a big female group. You don't want to go out for dinner with 10 women. You don't want to go on holiday with all these women. And I'm only realizing this now, and I don't know if it's like just exhaustion. Like I'm just, but I'm much better when there's just two or three of us, and we can go, and we can really get into the nitty gritty, and we can really talk. It just feels like women just, it's okay. Like you get the permission to have friendships the way they work for you, and not according to what you see on TV or what you have been perceived as growing up, that is, you've got to hang out with lots of people, and that's the way to do things. I'm interested to know a little bit about how we can be more self-aware in these dynamics, because sometimes we're in a life that we can't blow up, and we can't just go, right, I've got ADHD, that means I'm changing all my relationships and changing all my friendships, because sometimes our friendships go back a very, very long way, and they may not be our, the people that we connect with, but they might be people that we love, and we want to hold dearly, but maybe we want to be more authentic with. And that is what I think many of us battle with, is moving into this chapter of, okay, I'm now understanding there's neurodivergence there, which is why there's been so many difficulties. How can I show up authentically in these friendships now?
Yeah, I mean, this answer is maybe a little bit different. Okay, so I think there is stuff that you can control, and then there's stuff that you can't. But even the stuff that you can't sometimes just happens to work out and is a blessing in disguise.
Mm,
ADHD is an issue with performance, not knowledge, when it comes to relationships and social skills. Like, we know what to do in social interactions. The problem is with actually carrying it out in the moment. So, it's like I can sit here and tell you what you should do, what you should do differently, but then it would be like preaching to the choir because you already know what the right thing is to do. So we could talk about things that you could do to prevent a fire from starting. Like if you're feeling angry or you're feeling very emotional and you know that something not socially acceptable is about to come out, what can you do in that situation to calm down and then return? Because staying there and telling yourself, well, I should be doing this is not going to work because of the impulsivity and the issues with executive functioning. But I was going to say also that there are probably environmental factors. You're bound to have oopsies. Like that's what ADHD does. You're bound to, and I know 100%. Like there were moments where I thought I felt safe with someone. And I was like, I can ask this question. Like, this person is my friend. And man, did that go sour. And, I just asked and it didn't work out. But also, I think that you probably wouldn't want to be friends with someone where you can't just ask questions, right? You were saying that you feel more comfortable asking questions and being open with people you talk to, not having surface level
mm,
conversations. And so I think naturally it's sort of like all of the people who would not fit you very well kind of get funneled out. It's like a strainer,
yeah.
right?
As
So
as
like
you get
you'll
older as well, I think.
yeah, exactly. So like you screw up, but also you kind of didn't because you were yourself. You were testing the waters, and then that person went away. But it's okay because that means that you can't be yourself, and it's hard for us not to be ourselves.
Yeah.
So I feel like the people who stay are the ones who are probably the most similar to us, the least sensitive. Like they're
Mm.
sensitive, right? But they also understand that if you say something you don't necessarily mean it, coming from a bad place. And they could just point that out to you. Like they could say, well, the way you said it kind of hurt my feelings, but I know you didn't mean it like that.
Mm.
And then you can talk about it instead of, them dumping you as a friend.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because ADHD in women has not been a conversation for that long, really over the past 5 years, it's become a lot more topical, and a lot more women are realizing they're neurodivergent in some way, whether it's there's this autism, dyslexia, ADHD, the combination of where maybe anxiety and OCD and depression have sort of sat in their lives and they've not quite understood it. And we seem to gravitate towards people who are quite similar to us, the ones that have stuck by, those friendships that has been tested and they're still there. And I've seen that there seems to be like a ripple effect of one person having the diagnosis, talking about it in their friendship group, and realizing that, oh, that's why we're so similar. We both love spontaneity and we love a bit of chaos, but we also love creativity, and we've changed our career quite a few times, but we're also prone to lots of sensitivity and worry and anxiety. And it is interesting to see that maybe subconsciously we've gravitated to our tribe, and now we've got the language to be able to articulate why we've kind of stayed with those people, and maybe why the other ones, like you say, have sort of just fallen away. But it doesn't help still when we do have these sensitivities where we do feel maybe, I think RSD is, I think FOMO, fear of missing out, when people go, you've got such bad FOMO, or you're always, you always feel like you're not being included. That
Yes.
is 100% RSD. And that does manifest, I think, quite specifically in women. I don't really hear of men getting FOMO. And would you say that is part of the gender structure, that we think we need to be inclusive, or we have to include, or we have to be included? I mean, I'll give you an example. If
Yes.
I found out a group of my friends have gone out for dinner and they've not included me, that hurts. But there's probably a
Yes.
reason for it. And I have to be really self-aware, because I can spiral and then go, they've left me out. Do they not care about me? Like, what's our friendship based on? And I might be like, that's it. I don't want to see them again. But I have to unravel that myself. And that feels quite hard. And I know that a lot of other women go through that. So I guess it lands back on us, doesn't it? We have to be self-aware how that can show up in these dynamics.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think knowledge is power about yourself, understanding yourself. But then I also think understanding the research also on friendship and social dynamics is helpful too, because then when something happens, you're just like, well, they're human beings and this is something that humans do. But yeah, I think in terms of what you said about thinking about a lot of different angles, or a lot of different ways to interpret the situation. There's an activity I do with kids, it's typically mostly girls, in therapy, where I grab like objects around my office and post-it notes. And we come up with either situations that are specific to them or ambiguous situations, like all your friends get an invitation to a birthday party in the mail and you haven't got one. And like, how do you interpret that? And so typically people who experience RSD, like the first thought will be like, they don't like me, right? That's an option. But then what are some other ways to interpret the situation? Maybe it got lost in the mail, or maybe the email did not deliver. Maybe they just didn't have your email address or your mom's email address. There are a lot of different ways to interpret it. And I think that's helpful because once you sit down and really think about the situation realistically and flexibly, then you can decide, well, what am I going to do? Like, what do I think is most likely? What are the possibilities that I think are probably true? And then what am I going to do with that information? Am I going to sit here and sulk? Am I,
Hmm.
am I just going to hate myself? Or should I maybe go to her and just ask her what happened? I think probably a lot of people with ADHD, once they come down from that wave, will say, I'm going to go ask her what happened. And then a lot of girls and women who are asked what happened probably don't expect to be asked what happened,
Yeah.
because we live in a society where, like, if you're rejected, you're expected or to just not ask about it. But in my mind, it's like, I'd rather be directly rejected, right? Because we prefer that directness
Mm,
and know that I was being rejected and have that information rather than guess or miss out on an opportunity to be included if
mm.
it was a mistake. So, you weigh out the pros and cons and what works for you, and remind yourself that, you can't control the environment or what other people do, but you can't control what you do. And you have to ask yourself, like, how would I feel proud of myself, at the end of the day?
Yeah. I think it's modeling how you want to show up in a friendship. And yeah, that's not easy to go up to someone and say, do you mind me asking why I wasn't invited? Because it makes
Yeah.
everyone feel very uncomfortable. And also, we are exposing ourselves to potentially an answer that is going to be quite hurtful. And that could potentially shut down that friendship, or it can crack it open and make it a bit more honest and authentic. And I do think, it shouldn't be the norm to not have an authentic friendship. Like sometimes it feels like a lot of girls who spend a lot of time bitching about each other behind each other's backs and gossiping and being, like you say, passive aggressive. And again, I was talking to my daughter about this, who's nearly 11, and she is kind of hitting that peak. Two's company, three's a crowd. One friend comes over, another one says something mean about the other friend, and why are they speaking badly about her behind her back? Like she's trying to understand all of this. And the only thing I can say is don't be that person that does speak badly about people behind their backs. Like be that person that says, if she's not here, I'm not going to speak badly about her. Or don't gossip about people, because gossip for me feels like very dirty, and I feel very um like unsanitary afterwards. Like I don't know, I just feel very uncomfortable. If you go for a coffee and the whole coffee's just been gossiping about other people, I try and change the conversation. But a lot of women's friendship is based on gossip and talking about people behind their backs. And I'm not saying everyone does that, but it's trying to find a way to have these conversations that don't involve speaking about people. And maybe what you said at the beginning of the conversation about men, it is easier because they talk about football. They can
Yes.
like roll
Yeah, there's
around.
less drama.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
can roll around on the grass and kick each other and it's all funny, and they
Mhm.
can sit in a car and not look at each other and just have a conversation about work and life and kids, and there's no expectation there. We don't have to have all the solutions, but I think it's important that we lay it out on the table so many women can go, okay. So that's why I feel tight in my chest when I'm around certain people, or that's why I really struggle in those dynamics. Hi, everyone. Just a little interruption to today's podcast to let you know that More Yourself, my brand new community membership space for late diagnosed ADHD women, is now officially open. You've probably heard me talking about it a lot and posting about it. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that we have had so many amazing members join. We have workshops already booked in for the next 3 or 4 months, and we are just getting to know each other. So if you fancy coming and connecting with like-minded women and learning more, evolving more, developing more, creating more awareness around your ADHD and how it's shown up, but most importantly, stepping into a new chapter with this better awareness of ADHD and how you want to live and thrive alongside your ADHD. More Yourself is that place to come and unmask, be yourself, be more authentic, and lean into what actually works for you. So all the details are on my show notes. Come and say hello. We are absolutely loving getting to know each other. And on the 30th of September, we're going to have our first workshop, and it's going to be all about a 10-year visioning plan where we have awareness of our ADHD and where we want to go to over the next decade of our lives. I'm really, really excited. It's very powerful stuff. So if this is for you, all the information is on my website, which is adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk, alongside lots of information about my book, my programs, and obviously now the community space. I really hope to see you there. And I would love to maybe ask your professional opinion about how we can honour our own social battery so we don't feel burnt out when we do have to do these interactions. Because at the end of the day, we are probably working, we're probably got kids, there's probably things that we need to do in social dynamics that involve lots of women. School, I know that a lot of people find that struggle at the school gates, feeling kind of like you're either in the crowd or you're not in the crowd, or that those very shallow surface level conversations that you have to have with the other school mums that you've never really kind of got into the depths with. How can we guard ourselves so we are kinder and more compassionate to ourselves for the times, for the more meaningful relationships, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think this differs for everyone based on their work situation or their daily
Mm,
life. Like I'm thinking about kids for I think the kids and teens have it the hardest because that's when, you're basically in your own little environment, right? Capsule where you're surrounded by these experiences, right? Where people can gossip about each other. It's called victimization, right? Bullying. So there's direct and indirect victimization, and indirect is more common in girls, which is the gossiping and right reputational, excluding people, and sometimes it is on purpose and it's for, the reason of maybe rising up or increasing in social status, which is a thing too. And you see that for adults too, but it shows up maybe as differently, like in terms of fame or how much money you have. And we know that those people generally they're powerful for a reason. It's because people want to be like them and they want to do favors for them and to help them. So that way, maybe they can gain that status too. And you see that playing out also for kids and teens. And so I think they have it pretty difficult because we're here preaching as adults who have more independence and a, a more solid form of identity, and more confidence, I think, relative to when we were in middle school, telling them it's okay to have one friend. But when you're in it, and you're seeing, I just had this vivid memory pop in when you mentioned that the numbers seem to matter, when you're young, like the more friends you are, maybe the healthier you are, the better off you are, the more popular or accepted you are. I remember there was a thing when I was growing up in school, in elementary school, I think even middle school, it stopped in high school, but it was like when you had a birthday and you came to school, each friend was expected to bring you one or more balloons.
Mm.
And I remember the most popular girl looked like she was about to fly away into the sky because she had
Oh,
I mean, you can't even imagine how many balloons. It
yeah.
looked like a hot air balloon was about to like lift her up. But that's very visible, and it's strategic. And kids don't even know that it's strategic. They think it's maybe it's a
Yeah,
nice
but
thing
that's
to do.
heartbreaking
But
as well, isn't it? If you're just
right.
yeah, if
If
those
you
balloons are that physical
status symbol.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a status symbol. And then you see that the less popular girls have maybe 2 or 3 balloons.
Mm,
And it's you're expected to like be equally happy, right? Be happy with the balloons that you have. Like
mm,
it's hard. It's hard to actually be in that situation. But as adults, we have the perk of not having to, maybe invisible balloons. Like you don't really notice no one knows how many friends I have. And that's protective in the sense because then I feel more powerful in choosing how many friends I have. And so I think, as we get older, it's less obvious. And then for that reason, maybe we could feel less pressure to having, more friends. And we can focus more on the quality rather than the quantity of relationships and shift in that way. I know I've heard of a lot of women with ADHD who initially focus more on trying to fit into like the mom wine nights or whatever. And then they realize this just isn't for me. And they stop doing that, maybe called one person from the group who they like, and they just get wine with that person.
yeah.
And that works for them.
Yeah, that's so true. You just reminded me, I've always had a thing with my birthday. I love celebrating other people's birthdays, but I've always really not liked my birthday at all. And my birthday, I'm a Gemini, I'm in June. I should be like all sociable and want to like do a big party and everything. But my birthday gives me like the worst anxiety ever. And all I ever want to do is just be with my husband and my kids. And my friends all say to me, what are you going to do? You're going to go out for dinner? You're going to organize something? Like we never go out, we never do anything for your birthday. And it took me a bit of time to reflect. And actually, I put something on my Instagram a couple of years ago about it. And I was just processing as I was writing. And I said, I think that RSD is played into this anxiety that I have about my birthday because there's this
Me
fear.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's this fear of what happens if people don't show up. Like
Don't show up.
what happens if
Yeah.
people just think, oh, I really don't want to go out for dinner and she's making me go out for dinner, or people forget about my birthday and then that shows, and then I have all these different anxieties where it's just, for me, it's just always been easier just to shut the whole thing down and not even allow people not to show up because
Yes.
then I don't have to worry. Whereas I will always show up for my friends' birthdays. Like I want to be there for them. And I think my friends want to show it for me. But I also get very sensitive if someone says, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm busy, or I can't come, or I'm got plans that week, or I'm away, or whatever. And so anyway, I put all of this in a post that was just like me, like literally brain dumping. And I got hundreds and hundreds of replies from people messaging me, commenting, saying, oh my God, you've just articulated what I feel about my birthday, but I've never really understood the layers of it. And how, now I understand with my ADHD and there's social anxiety and RSD there, that I've never really been able to process why my birthday is quite a painful, visceral time for me. So it's interesting that you relate to it as well.
Yes, 100%. If anything, like, so I started writing as a kid, but also when I was 14, I started writing in a diary. And I have the entry still. Like I remember it so vividly. It was the first time that I think I really sat down and thought about that. I was 14, I think. So I had my birthday at a restaurant, and a few people didn't show up. And there were people who were important to me who I thought would show up. And their reason or excuse for not showing up didn't feel sufficient. And so I remember just looking at the empty seat and feeling so hurt and thinking like, I'm not going to do it like this anymore. And I wrote about that and I said, I feel like birthdays are, I don't know if this is maybe putting too much emphasis on it, but maybe it's not because so many people resonated with your post about it. But I said, birthdays are really a sign or a symbol of who your true friends are, because these are the people who are going to go out of their way to show you that they love you for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's really interesting because so my birthday has always been, like I said, at the beginning of June, which traditionally here in the UK is half term. It's like a midterm holiday, and it's normally the end of May, beginning of June, and a lot of people go away on holiday, and that has always been the case. And so my birthday has typically always fallen right in the middle of those holidays. So a lot of people have not been there, and I would never expect people not to go on holiday and stay behind for my birthday. And then my 40th fell during the depths of COVID. And that one time I thought, you know what, I'm going to celebrate before COVID happened. And then COVID happened and we couldn't really do anything. And it was just really done in a way that I really wouldn't have wanted my birthday. And so it has been a sensitive thing. And I kind of think, oh, I should celebrate my birthday. But now I've just kind of put it to one side and thought, you know what, I don't need to know who my friends are if they can turn up to my birthday or not. So I know it's very self-indulgent to think about it all in this way. And I think sometimes we are with ADHD, we're so in our heads and we do ruminate and we do overanalyze that we can almost create things like make things bigger in our heads. Not to say that these things didn't happen or we're not being validated, but sometimes we just need to kind of like remove ourselves from that situation and maybe distract ourselves and do something creative, go for a walk, do some breath work, go and find someone that we do connect with, go and find somebody that we know straight away has got our back and we love being with them, and not hyper focus or fixate on the difficulties and this and the challenges that we find with certain people as well. Would you say that's a good coping strategy, or am I deflecting by doing that?
I don't know. I think maybe we need to like land somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
right? Like I think I quote my mother-in-law in my book, and she would tell me because I was always not always, but I cried a lot in front of her. And so she would tell me, Gilly, your expectations are your worst
Oh,
enemy. Um,
yes. That
I love
lands.
those mantras. Yeah.
That's a big
And
one.
so it's true. Yeah. Because what you were saying was, and I think it's true for me too. And I'm sure other women who are neurodivergent can relate to this. But I really do feel like I really make such an effort
Mm,
to be somewhere when it involves someone I really love
yeah.
and care about. So if someone is not there for me in that same way, then I think they don't love me in the same way. Or, that's the interpretation. And it could be true, right? I mean, when we think about when you put the notes on the stick on the tissue box at my office, we think about the situation at a lot of different angles. Like one angle possibly is that maybe they don't like you as much as you like them. That's possible, right? You could still be friends and for that to happen, where maybe you would rank them higher as a friend, and they would rank you lower, but you're still technically friends. So I guess like I think a piece of me also wants to be realistic with that. Like there are going to be people who care about me less than I care about them. And that's going to be disappointing. And that's okay. And then what am I going to do with that? Like I can use that and then, in the future, maybe put more time, put more eggs into this friendship basket versus that friendship basket because I know that this friendship basket is more rewarding and it feels more reciprocal to me.
Yeah. I mean, what you said then, that your mother-in-law said that to you, expectations are your enemy, that was a really big one because I've heard that a lot to me as well. It's like, just lower your expectations, manage your expectations. And I think there's a part of RSD again, that there's something there, that we put huge expectations on ourselves, and we are the perfectionists, and we are the ones that really hold ourselves to such high standards, and how we show up for others and how we portray ourselves to the world. And we kind of expect that from others as well, because I think we work really, really hard to show up for people. We have these big emotions, highly sensitive people, and we do want to make people feel good. Again, I'm speaking very broadly, very generally. And I do wonder that because we have those expectations in ourselves that are often unrealistic, which is why we burn out and we do feel socially exhausted and all of that. And sometimes we just go off, off the kilt a little bit, not off the kilt, like we sort of just disappear for a bit, maybe due to the overwhelm. We just kind of don't answer texts, and we just kind of go underground for a little bit to almost recoup that energy that we've been putting out. And then we have those expectations on others as well. And sometimes people, like you say, they don't prioritize us the same way we may prioritize them. They have other things, they have other cares, and we can't control that. It is being realistic, isn't it?
But I also feel like, when you do find a good friend, and it takes a lot, you have to
Mm,
go through a lot of relationships and interactions to really find that gem.
mm,
Because then you'll be surprised because some people do reach out to you spontaneously and and they are there for you in moments where you maybe don't expect them to be, and then that could really flourish into a meaningful relationship. Like those people exist. Yeah, but I was thinking also in terms of like the gossip and standing for what you think is right and following your values. There was a situation in graduate school when I was at a practicum and we would sit together and have lunch, like the therapist. It was kind of a gossipy atmosphere, which felt very ironic to me because we were therapists. And you don't think typically of therapists sitting and gossiping about each other or, just people. And so I was sitting at a table where they were all like gossiping about another girl who was sitting just close, like in the same room, but she was out of earshot. And I felt the same thing that you described, Kate. It felt like my blood was boiling. I felt so uncomfortable. And it just kind of like came out. I was like, well, if you have some thoughts about her, why don't you just go tell her? And they all give me this look. And I'm not welcome at that table anymore. And so when I got home and I told my husband about it, because I was already kind of an outcast and I was, trying to fit in, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Like you can't force the square peg, into a round hole. So I went home, told my husband about what happened, and he was like, I think he has kind of this generic way of looking at relationships. He was like, Gil, you shouldn't have said that. And I was like, why not? Like they were talking shit about this person who was right there and it was wrong. And he was like, you're never going to make friends that way. And this is the typical way, right? Of thinking about, I think, relationships. That is the neurotypical way. Like people generally would be expected to just sit there. If you don't have anything to say, just don't say anything, right? Don't correct them. But I feel like it's like we have this instinct to just, to just say what's on our mind. And maybe we have this, I don't know, like value system that's different.
yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's the value system, and I struggle with that myself. I struggle with lies. I struggle with inauthenticity. I struggle with beating around the bush. I struggle with keeping quiet and staying small and shrinking myself, and all of those things which are not socially accepted for women. We're then, deemed outspoken, rude, direct, dysregulated, like you said, unhinged. You don't ever call a man unhinged. It's typically a woman. And I don't have a problem with having a strong value system. I don't. I just think that the world around us has a problem with somebody that says the truth. perhaps we as neurodivergent women might need to learn a way to sort of soften our edges a little bit. But then again, I kind of think, is that shrinking ourselves? Is that making, changing ourselves, masking for the comfort of others? Because historically, we've had to do that for the neurotypical world. We've had to change and mold ourselves. And so I wonder if it's time for us just to kind of be like, well, this is how I communicate and this is what feels good to me. And I need truth and I need directness. And if we can't have a relationship like this, whether it's a partner or friendship, it's going to be a struggle. And I have a husband who sounds quite similar to you, who kind of like doesn't appreciate sometimes my directness. And he maybe thinks I'm sometimes quite insensitive with the way I deliver things. But I would rather say it, have the confrontation, get it out the way, move through it, process it, grow and learn from it, than repress it, have it under the carpet. That maybe would feel better in the moment, but not for the long term. And that's why I guess seeing a therapist, a neuroaffirming therapist or a coach, or indeed a marriage counsellor, I think it's really hard if we don't understand how neurodivergence shows up, because when we understand how it shows up, like this whole conversation, like the nuances that we've talked about, we can then see, okay, well, that is what's driving it. That's what the deep foundations of me are. And we can find ways to meet each other halfway. Like, I'm not saying that because we've got ADHD, we're right. And that is the way we have to operate. Like, we have to be sensitive to other people and be kind and compassionate. This is what I try and remind myself as well. But it's important we understand our neurodivergence so we can live more authentically, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking through this in the same way, in exactly the way that you described it, because I wrote an article about neurodiversity and masking. And I feel like a lot of the content about masking, it talks about how you should be fully yourself, right? Completely unmasked. And I would love that. I would love to live in a world where I could just completely unmask and be myself and be accepted. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Mm.
And, I've experienced a lot of rejection, like real rejection, because I took off the mask. And so I think there needs to be a compromise, like, finding a space where you can relate to other people, where you're surrounding yourself with people who are similar to you. So maybe you do feel safe, could be one way to unmask. And with also keeping in mind that you might still insult people in the context because you're not replicas. Like, people are different, they think differently, they have different sensitivities. But you can find spaces where you're with people who are similar to you. And then, also try to find kind of like a reasonable way. So you're not burning out, but you're assimilating a little bit, right? So that way you can get buy-in, like get a job, have people help you if you need help, you know, try not to get fired, like if you like the job. Just kind of basic, social skills. So that way you can fit in to a point where you can live a happy life and then, be yourself in situations where other people accept you.
Mm.
It's like the metaphor, the analogy I'll give is like if you move to a different country, like if I moved to France, I could just be like, I'm American, I'm here and proud and wave an American flag and just completely ignore French culture. Or I could try to learn the language, understand the cultural norms, like what's socially accepted, what's not accepted, and blend them with some of my personality. And then when I'm home, I'm myself. Or if I like some aspects of French culture, I might even integrate that into some of the way that I see the world. But, you don't live in a cave.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is trying to find a way that we can thrive and live well and succeed and have potential and have healthy relationships and authentic friendships, like exactly that. It's not hiding away and just doing life on your own in your own way, unless you really really want to. But we do want to we want to do well in this world and this lifetime that we've got. Gilly, thank you so much for allowing me to just kind of verbally process so many things, because we've not actually had a whole topic based on this, and I'm really excited to get this out and share it, because I have a feeling it's going to really relate to lots of people. And if people are listening to this and then you have related to it, or are there things that we've not quite touched on, or something that hasn't resonated, please do get in touch. And I'm sure between us that we'd love to have these conversations, because I actually think the more we communicate and have these conversations, it comes out in the open and it doesn't feel so taboo or so stigmatized. And we can have conversations with our neurotypical friends and say, yeah, so I've been recently diagnosed with ADHD. This is how it can often show up. If you don't know what RSD is, this is how it shows up. And this is why I may be more prone to FOMO, or might be more prone to sensitivity. And we can share this conversation so our other friends can understand how we feel in certain situations, and partners and everything as well. So yeah, I think the more we can share this kind of conversation, the less people, maybe the few generations underneath us, will have to suffer, because I've got a community, thankfully, of women, amazing women. It's a More Yourself community, and it's women, aged from about 30 to 70, who are only just discovering their neurodivergence. And there's women who are sort of 60 and 70 who have said, I've lived my whole life and I've never really been able to understand or articulate any of this. So it is really powerful to have a community where we can be authentic and unmask. And I would love you to come in, Gilly, and maybe we can talk more about this with the community and unpack it even more. But for now, thank you so, so much. Tell people how they can find you, how they can connect with you, and especially about your new book as well.
Yeah, so you can find me through my website. You can message me through there, which is drgillycon.com, or you can find me on social media. I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle is at Dr. Gillycon. And my book, I happen to have a copy right here. This is a coincidence, by the way. So here it is. And the title is Allow Me to Interrupt. A Psychologist Reveals the Emotional Truth Behind Women's ADHD. It was released in the UK in October, I think mid-October. So now it should be available internationally, and you can find it in any book retailer.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your insights. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope that we'll get time to speak again very soon.
Thank you too.
If this episode has been helpful for you and you're looking for more tools and more guidance, my brand new book, The ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit, is out now. You can find it wherever you buy your books from. You can also check out the audiobook if you do prefer to listen to me. I have narrated it all myself. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you for the next episode.